Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 11 of Director's Commentary for the Lazarus Expedition. Today's session is very combat heavy, and that means that there's probably not actually a lot to talk about. We will go through it, of course, but with it being mostly combat, we can talk a little about monster strategy and a little bit about spell lists and that sort of thing, and prioritizing targets and what it looks like from the DM side running these combats. But I think a lot of this, it'll be a short session today. So without further ado, let's start. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Lazarus Expedition. We have a stellar session for you today. Our players are in the Badlands, and they're going to have a good time. They're going to have a great time. But they're not going to have a good time. It's going to be a bad time. Players just having a wonderful time with the rocky ground and the monsters and the no vegetation or life and the water filled with algae and intelligent things that'll pull you into it. Before we get into all that, why don't we see what's going on with our players? How's it going, Nick?
It's going all right. Yeah.
Your fans off. Is it not? Our players are not excited.
No, it's not.
Look at this. Look at the distracted nature of the players. It's okay. Happens. We're here to play some games. Start the game off, you know. Not everyone's always in the mood. We always need a little bit of time to bring the party into the game. One of the things that is really useful to do that are the sort of quick check-in. How's everyone doing? This just gets people talking and people getting used to being, all right, now we're doing this thing. The banter in the beginning is always a little meh. And the most important thing for getting people into the game is the recaps. I think we've talked about this before, but I'm going to talk about it again shortly. Having the players run a recap and explain where we are and how we got here is a useful tool. It helps us get the players' heads into right, we're in D&D mode. It also lets the party remember why they're here, because when you play D&D and then a week passes and you've been doing your life and your other things, you come back to the game and you're like, right, so we're doing something, but what happened? Why are we here? So the recap is mostly for the players. Sometimes I'll pass it off as if it's for chat or for the people who might have missed the last session, but it's for the players. Sometimes our players will suggest well, what if we put together a video recap that we could play at the beginning of the session to remind everyone of where they are? And I have sort of done that in the past, but you really need the players to listen to the recap. If people don't listen to the recap, then it doesn't help. And so we want the players to hear the recap. We don't really care if the audience has the recap, because the audience is probably binging this stuff anyway, or you're watching a show. Is very different than being in it, and you can kind of remember what's going on, or at least catch up. And if you don't remember what's going on, it's not that big of a deal, because you don't have to make decisions based on information. You can forget things and be like, oh yeah, that thing, totally. But if the players forget things, it's awkward. So we really like doing recaps for the players' benefit. And as we can see, the party's getting a little bit more into the game already, just with a little bit of back and forth banter. Now, I will say, Nick is a classic Brit banter boy. It's a sentence I never thought I'd say. And he's really good at... He's got excellent social skills, and he's very good at bringing people together and telling fun stories and sort of building camaraderie around him. He excels at that. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit here till we figure... Well, actually, before we skip ahead, let's talk about where we are. Let's have a recap for you all.
No. All right,
wait, maybe not. Hold on.
Do it.
Where last we left off, we had fought some bird people. What were they called?
Oh.
4 letters. Starting with a K. This is exactly why we do the recap, right? I mean, the name of the bird people doesn't matter, but we want our party to remember the stories we're playing through. And so sometimes we have to ask them questions about it. And the name of the bird people doesn't really matter, but we want to, we want to throw a bunch of stuff at them and have as much of it stick as possible. So you just fought all these bird people last week. Their names were all over the initiative tracker. I said their names 100 times. What were they? That is a medieval Japanese weapon, I believe, not a bird person.
Who cares?
Who cares is the right name. There you go.
Dead. 4-letter word. DEAD.
Yeah.
That's right.
It had been a brutal battle. Skip ahead. Your emotion is, just.
I only ever scrolled down. Okay, I've been on Twitter too long. That scrolled up motion that died. Okay, if I scroll past something, I just keep scrolling down in the hope.
It's a good group.
But that night, I would like to, unless anyone in the party objects, turn our kill into a feast.
Right. So where are we? We're in the Badlands. We've been traveling here. We got here. Like the whole campaign is about coming to this new land. Well, this new land to the party, and finding a scroll of resurrection to bring back in to resurrect good King Arnold. Right. Easy peasy. And where the party is, they traveled up the river. Half the party got killed. They got some reinforcements. Now they're traveling up a different river, and they're in the Badlands, and it's a bad place. There's no vegetation. There's no life. You got to bring all your food with you. There's monsters in the water. There's just a scary, shitty, hot, dry place, and the water's dangerous. So the party's parked on the side. After getting battled, the boat is slightly damaged. It's going to take them a little while to recover. They can chain Liamon's tiny huts together so that they can rest infinitely, essentially. And they're going to fix their boat when they've got some tools, and we already sort of figured out how that would work last time. We just need a few days of downtime for them to rest, and then they're going to continue on their journey. So that's where we are.
Big feast, but it's traditional in hobgoblin culture. And Iron Grip will explain this, that after you kill something, you have to eat it so that it can go to the great maw in the sky, right?
This is great lore. He didn't run this lore by me. He just started spouting lore about the maw in the sky, and he does a really, really good job, and I have nothing to input and say or stop. And I think last time we talked a little bit about players injecting lore and running with it, and I think we talked previously about the maw being really good because it could represent multiple gods, or it could represent like different facets of different gods, or it could even in fact be a singular god out there that it has a corresponding relation to the classical pantheon. Because it's a very broad concept. It's like hunger that you have to feed. It's so broad that you could fit a lot of different concepts into it, or you could find a way to mesh it with other things very well. If he had come up with something like super hyper focused and detailed, like, the god of the dead skin on your right arm after working in the field all day. Like, that's a really very that's a hard god to fit into things, unless you're talking about the dead skin metaphorically, and you're really talking more about like the hard work in the field. But if you're like actually just talking about the skin that's like flaking off of you and causing dust in the house, like that would be a hard god to integrate. But he picked a really broad concept that is easy to integrate. So good job, Potato McWhiskey.
Where it'll go get eaten and digested, and then be reborn in the soil, as is in the tradition of his hobgoblin ancestry. Now, I don't know if all hobgoblins believe this, but his particular tribe believes in the great maw in the sky. That's why when a smaller goblin dies, you eat him. You can't let the meat go to waste. Plus, it's the only way he can get into heaven.
That's very kind of him.
So, our opponents being fearsome, I will cook us up a nice meal of kazu liver and invite everyone to feast.
So we're gonna skip a little bit.
It kind of look a little bit pink, though,
A little bit of role play, a little banter.
Well, that's because I'm a demented old man.
Cheers to that.
Wait,
A little banter.
Tell me how good my feast is, okay?
Some
Listen, I got a
rolls.
great int, okay? I'm the smartest hobgoblin on earth. So you just want me to tap my int? How do I do that?
Well, on the far left side where it says intelligence, you click the text.
There you go.
This is episode 11 of 5th edition, plus maybe Cosmos Kitchen or 2 in there for him. The character sheets are pretty intuitive. Maybe I should give my players a character sheet walkthrough video. Just like a quick, this is how you use 5th edition character sheets. Maybe I need to create that video for my players.
it's barely in the game for that much sass, Neal.
There you go. This is the best.
He's only been
kazu
playing this
liver.
for 3 years, okay? Give him a break.
Hey, I so rarely click that text, okay? Listen, I'm gonna forget.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so if I'm
It's
making my grub
fine.
skill check, how does his intelligence check relate?
All right, we're gonna move on.
Need anything?
You could do grub skill versus intelligence. Grub skill is a silly score. It was a throwaway joke from like 15 years ago, from like 5 years before I started doing this professionally. Just me and my friends were dicking around as kids and came up with grub score for funsies. And somehow it has integrated itself into the other campaigns because it's just good enough of a concept to roll for, but it also doesn't make any freaking sense. And so it never gets fleshed out. And so it's a perpetual like pseudo stat that is fun and pointless, but everyone wants to mechanize and there's no way to mechanize it. Okay. And that's the best way it is. If there ever was like a legitimate grub score set of rules, I would actually probably play with them. Yeah. If you can figure those out, you make them, you post them to the subreddit, that'd be great. Thank you.
Or as
Yeah, because grub skill is your enjoyment of food, but there should be some level of not. Let's just skip ahead. Skip. The cooking on that is maybe not the most important part. Skip.
Not, you're not eating?
Not particularly hungry today.
The whole day.
Can I eat your cipher?
Yeah.
a tiny hut, like ritual casted in this area.
On outside, squishy inside. And
trying to get to some good stuff.
Fishman, Sahugwen, but they. Here we go. This is where we want to go. There's a good interaction here
And
with one of our NPCs.
Yes. Drawraise will raise the idea that he'll keep a bubble, a tiny hut, like ritual casted in this area, with everyone in it every 8 hours, so that we have an area to retreat to if things get scary outside, and we can hide our numbers, all that sort of stuff.
What's the name
Sounds
of
good.
our new guide, Neal?
Your guide is Ostigan.
So after Drawraise says that about the plan to
Here we
defend
go.
ourselves, Ostigan, what can we expect out here?
To tell you,
I mean,
oops.
those Kaku things were bad enough, but
I
get the
tried to
feeling that's
tell
not the
you
worst of
once what was in the Badlands, and no one wanted to know. If you remember from, was it our last director's commentary or the one before that? We talked about this, where they asked what's in the Badlands, and he started talking, and then the party like went off on a tangent, and now they got a little bit wrecked, just a little wrecked. So let's find out what's actually in the Badlands. Now you interested?
Well, it was less relevant then. It's more relevant now.
Yeah, now we're in the Badlands.
In
Little chuckle.
in the waters, the three biggest threats are jellyfish you see bobbing there. Do not take that bath. Giant crabs, hard on outside, squishy inside. And fishmen, Sahugwen, but they're not so far upriver that we should be past them now. Maybe scouting party, but otherwise it's fine. In air, Kazu, we can kill, but they're hard. Winged, looking for my notes. Snake. They sound not so scary. They're much more scary than that. They build up charge and whole area around them.
Oh, electric flying snakes.
Yes. They have wing. Did you see that look on Nick's face for just a moment? Where'd it go?
Flying snakes.
Yes. Look at that. Look at that doubt. Yes. Look at that electric flying snakes. Really, DM? Electric flying snakes. Okay, but for realsies, everyone, these electric flying snakes are not some ridiculous idea that I've come up with. They're straight out of the 2nd edition Monstrous Manual. All right, they're bright. They're colorful. They're traditionally more of a jungle creature than a desert creature. They're supposed to eat soft fruits and stuff. They have plus a bonus of 3 to their initiative. They also normally do poison damage on bites, and a big spark shower 10 feet in diameter for 2d8 points of damage, say for half against breath weapons. In 5th edition, we changed the damage and other things around quite a bit, but these are just a classic Dungeons and Dragons monster. And that face though is pretty appropriate for the concept. Flying electric winged snakes is sort of dumb. And I can't tell if Mutin is just like rubbing his eye because something's in it, or if he's also like, oh my god, what the fuck, this is a silly idea. But these are appropriate reactions to this monster type. They have wing too. They flap. The wings build charge.
Very odd. Sounds like my kind of animal, though.
Yes.
12 razors will now start calling Steermere reverse crab because he's squishy on the outside and hard on the inside.
Oh.
Are you able to turn down your mic a little bit, Koibu? People are saying it's too loud.
Yes. How's that?
Probably good.
All right.
Is there any way to deal with the Kazu to make them not attack us?
Oh, interesting question. Now, the reason that's interesting is there is now there's a game afoot here. Encounters should be fun, and the fun should be the encounters. If you are really good at something in D&D, essentially you don't play that part of the game. Like if you have a character with 25 strength, it doesn't matter. Or I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but like you are never going to be challenged by any strength-based things. And so strength-based challenges stop being a part of the game. When you are really good at one thing, like super good at one thing, that part of the game we just don't play anymore. You know, if you like can never get lost because your perception is so good, or you've got a set of stats that are an ability, a skill, a class feature that you can't get lost, well, we've just taken getting lost out of the game. And so there's nothing to be done there. Similarly, if there is like a monster and there is a way that that monster can be avoided, and the players learn how that monster can be avoided, unless that avoiding technique specifically creates problems elsewhere, then that monster just doesn't exist anymore. Like the party's like, cool, well, we learned how to avoid the blah, 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 and now that thing will never exist again, right? It's like if your party is, oh, there might be traps in the area. Well, I'm going to take a stick and I'm going to tap the floor in front of me every 6 inches. And I'm just going to tap, tap, tap as I walk. And that way, there's never going to be any more traps. And with traps, it's a little bit better because, you know, they don't know that there's traps until they start hitting traps. And then they want to look for the traps. But at least you get to hit them with the first one. And with the Kazu thing, it's sort of the same. Like, oh, there's Kazu. Well, how do we avoid this? But the party never learned how to avoid Kazu. So the question here is a player asking an NPC, how do we avoid these monsters? Which is a great question. It's a question that any character would ask. But if there were a straightforward, like, do this thing to avoid these monsters, we'd essentially just be taking them out of the game. Also, if there were a thing that we could do to just avoid those monsters, the guide probably would have told them ahead of time, or it would be, you know, if there was a way that you could prevent ants from getting into your house, like just a thing that you could do, and then there would never be ants in your house again, no one would ever have ants. It just wouldn't be that you can sort of prevent ants from getting in your house, but like you've got to wait for them to show up and then you like blast them and then the area they came from with a bunch of ant spray. And in theory, I suppose you could go around the perimeter of your house and spray the whole thing with ant spray and then walk around the perimeter of the inside of your house and spray it all with ant spray. And you could do that like, you know, once a week or once a month and you could never have ants, but that is time consuming and cost consuming because you have to do the spraying and buy the spray. And so no one does it. But what I'm trying to get at is that the problem solving is the game. And so removing problems from the game removes game from the game. There's always a time and a place for it. But this is not that time.
Oh, well,
place.
I think so. We have already dealt with Kazu, no? They dead. I don't think these ones are coming back. Others?
Some of them got away, though. They got friends, maybe. They'll come back with their friends.
And what? Let their friends die?
I don't know. Maybe there's more of them.
I mean, they're peoples. They're not super dumb.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They did not do very well, huh? They got no food, and all but 1 or 2 died. So, if I were them, they would not come back. I would leave this meal alone. But who knows? I have brain bigger than bird. This is not a bad way of handling that situation, Neal. I had kind of forgotten what I had said in response to that. And pointing out that why would they come back when they just got their ass handed to them is a great way of being like, well, this isn't a problem that we're going to have to face, without removing the problem entirely. Like when the party comes back down the river after getting the scroll of resurrection, if they're successful, we can run into Kazu again, and it'll be later, weeks, months later. And now we could like have that as another encounter, maybe. Last thing that flies, that is problem. I think the word is manticore. It has a wing like bat, face like lion, tail that throws spikes, horns, a little bit of fire breath, you know.
Man, I don't know, but I guarantee that Roy would have known a lot about that.
Yeah.
Roy would, but Roy's not here.
Nope.
How
I'll
big
look
are
at
these
this
things?
guy.
Oh, they're size large. They take up a 10 by 10 by 10 cube. You know, these are great questions that the players ask. You know, how big is this creature? Totally reasonable, totally practical. That's exactly what someone would ask in game. But like from a DM side point of view, it's hard. Like I could just riff on something, but if you riff on something and make it up on the fly because it's not written down in the books, but then you can't remember what you said, then in another campaign, someone, or you know, later in the campaign, someone's going to ask you the same question, and if your answer is different, then you're gonna get questions and flack, and it's going to be a problem. And so often for these questions that ask for like highly specific details that like don't really matter, I try to avoid giving the highly specific details. Like, what size is the manticore? It's a large creature. You need to know the creature size because you're looking for like a sort of a range. But if I were to say it's 500 pounds, that's too specific of an answer. So when we give answers to questions, we want to give the players the information that they need without giving, which is not necessarily the information that they're asking for. Also, it's always fun just to like remind everyone that this is a game and that a large creature takes up a 10 by 10 by 10 cube.
Would since I live in this land, would I know a little bit about the manticore, like a local legend or like a encounter my people have had with one?
Good question as well.
Yeah, manticores are fairly rare, fairly solitary creatures. They're almost never encountered in pairs. You would give me a history check.
History check. Combination of I have information that I want to tell you, but like let's mechanize this and not just give you information. And a little bit of I'm going to ask you to do something that's going to take a few seconds so that I can have a few seconds to think and come up with my answers. Because I started giving him information right away. So clearly I was happy to delve out like certain amounts of info, but there's a moment of like, I need a moment to organize my thoughts. So I will create space by giving you a task to do, which might take you a moment or two.
Absolutely. 2 seconds. Let me find history.
See, it's on the left side of your character sheet, but not that far left. Ooh, very good roll. You don't know anything about them breathing fire. That sounds like new information to you, or maybe a lie, or maybe, you know, who knows? Maybe it's a myth, right?
But do they breathe fire?
I don't even remember right now. Maybe what's his face was lying. I can't actually remember whether the manticores breathe fire or not. I don't think so. If they've got a lion's head, they probably don't. If they don't actually breathe fire, then I did a great job. It was Ostigan spitting out random facts about manticores that aren't even true. In fact, I don't think they breathe fire. I think I did a great job as Ostigan being like, yes, they breathe fire when it's not true. And that gets the party a little concerned. But with a great history check, no, let's cast some shade on that, some doubt on it. But you do know they're capable of flying and flinging spikes off of their tails at a pretty good range. And they can kind of kite their opponents from the air with these until they run out of tail spikes or until their opponents are dead. And then they can swoop in and rip them apart with bites and claws.
Yeah,
they're-
and I'll tell the hobgoblin myth for the origin of the. Did you say a chimera or what was it called again?
Manticore.
Manticore. Is that the great maw in the sky was hungry one day, and it wanted a variety meal, and when it ate like 6 or 7 different creatures all at once, when it processed them, the manticore was born, and that was the origin story of the manticore.
So, as a side note, not related to what he's saying, but if you watch my face, right, when I look to the left on for you, your left, my right, that is the monitor that has our broadcasting software, and that's also usually the monitor where I keep my PDFs open. Directly in front, like towards the camera, is the monitor where I have Roll20, like the DM's side of Roll20 open, and where I also have like browser tabs open. And if I look to the right on the camera, that's where the viewer side of Roll20 is, because I've got 2 instances of Roll20 open to manage to run the game. And that's also where the Zoom call is. Actually, the Zoom call is now to the right and up. Like this direction is Zoom. This direction is Roll20 for the viewers, Roll20 for the players, for the DM, and then OBS and PDFs. And you can see, as he's talking, I am looking up and down to your left, which is me reading the PDF about manticores while he is telling his Maw story. So if you're ever wondering what the DM is doing, just take a look at which monitor I'm looking at, and that'll give you a little bit of a hint of what's going on.
That's why you shouldn't mix your meals after a battle.
Oh yeah, it's generally considered very. You shouldn't eat 2 types of creature at once for fear that you'll create a new being that could hunt you.
I want to know who's out there eating owls and bears at the same time, because that's just weird.
The god of hunger. He eats everything.
Yeah.
There's no god of hunger.
The great maw eats all.
Cypher won't
Like
give him a look
back
like,
eating.
don't bother.
Now, in addition to all the stuff that's going on, we've actually had a few musical changes. We started with like a desert track, and we've moved into this, I think it's called a Defiled Temple track, which is one of those like desolate, spooky, tension building tracks, just to, set us in the mood while we're talking about scary monsters and everything. But we started with like blowing sands and winds and something that sounded kind of warm and hot. And we've transitioned to this. Listen, it's really quiet.
Droll Races.
Maybe
Any
you can hear it.
clerics of the Great Maw back in your tribe?
We typically do not use much in the way of magic. The maw is less of a
It gets cast in a
spiritual,
look.
religious belief. It is more of a philosophy about how you should live.
Their clerics get the powers from those that they eat.
Huh.
There were a couple of, you may call them shamans, and the occasional cleric, but this was of the smaller goblins.
I'm also like, we're only 2/3 of the way through our monster list. Like, you're still talking to Ostigan. We're sidetracked in a conversation, which is great because this is fantastic role play. But I'm like, I have so many more monsters to tell you. You can see me waving the notebook with the monster list in my hands.
The god of the maw, his blessing would be to eat you, and so to be his cleric would to die.
Would be short ceremony.
I heard if you eat a dragon, you get to breathe fire.
Only if you eat their liver.
Do dragons have like a fire?
If you had even one bite of the
Gland?
liver of a dragon, it would kill you.
No one is sure where the dragon fire comes from. Do you want to hear about other creatures in Badlands, or you want to sit around, make dumb joke?
We thought you were done, Ostigan. Please, no,
No,
carry
those
on.
are just river and air creatures. There's all land creature too.
Well, we don't need to worry about those. We won't be on the land.
We're on the
Okay.
land right now. Wait, we're on the land right now. Tell us about them, Ostigan.
Yes. long lizard with 6 legs whose gaze turns you to stone. We call them basilisks.
We have them back home.
They are not so fun. Yes, you see statues on side of road or anywhere, you know that is bad. Do not gaze upon them. But then if you can't see them, they bite you easy.
We got a mirror here, Oscar. Anyone got a mirror?
That's just child's story. That does not work. No,
oh, really?
You spend a whole time holding mirror, trying to get creature to look at itself, and it does not work, and you waste your action, and then you die, because they have poison too. So no. In the same vein as if you know how to prevent an encounter or automatically succeed on an encounter, we're essentially removing them from the game. There are some of these classical monsters that have classical weaknesses, like Medusa, for example. With the Legend of Perseus, and he holds up it's not a mirror, I think it's a polished shield, and she meets her own gaze and then turns herself to stone. It's the same thing that people try to do with basilisks all the time. And I feel very mixed about these things, because having these cool monsters with scary abilities is great, but when people know, like, there's a legend about this thing, and here's this thing's weakness, but then, like, everybody knows the legend and the weakness, then it makes fighting these creatures a lot less scary. It would be what would be more fun is a character who tries to fight a Medusa and has to, like, retreat, or the battle is going poorly, and then they come up with the idea on the fly to do the mirror, or after retreating they come up with the idea of making a mirror on their own, and then they use it and overcome the creature. But when it's like, here's this terrifying monster, but the whole world knows how to defeat them with this one simple trick, monsters hate it. It doesn't have the same, like, then the players just come into the encounter and they're like, cool, I've got a mirror, I'm just going to try and make it look at the mirror, and I'm going to take make the monster look at the mirror action, and I'm just going to roll until I succeed. And I feel like it takes away some of the fun. And so having Ostigan here be like, your mirror trick is dumb, it's a child's legend, and it's not going to work, is my way of putting some cold water on that concept and saying, I know you've heard about this before, but it might not work. It might just be a total flop. And that way, if the party encounters these creatures, hopefully they won't run in expecting that to work and then trying. And maybe if they try it, it doesn't work. Maybe if they try it, it does work. But I want to put the party in a problem-solving mode, not I already have the answer, I just need to get lucky on my dice mode. Because that's not fun. That's not good gameplay. That's just, why bother having the encounter if you already know the weakness and you already have the tools and everything, So let's toss some cold water on some of these classic monster weaknesses.
Draw phrases will say we could turn their eyeballs into mirrors and they would be forced to look upon their own visage.
I look at draw phrases. How do you know about the mirror thing? Because back where I'm from, that's where everyone said. They said you carry a mirror for the basilisk if you were rich. The rich people walk around with mirrors.
Maybe you have different basilisk. Maybe your people tell story that is not true.
How do you know?
Good question. Well, I am expert in Badlands. This is my job. You see me carry a mirror?
I'm just saying that anyone who's tried the mirror, you're saying they've died, so they've not returned. So how do you know?
Oh, sure. Go back. Get mirror. It's not worth my time.
No, it's too late now. We should have. I'm just saying that maybe we should have brought one. That's all.
I have never used a mirror on the basilisk to see if it works. Exactly. I don't think it does. I think this is silly child's ploy.
I'm just saying that if I was a guy, I just would have liked to have known that there was.
If I was a creature,
before, so I could have brought a mirror.
They asked what creatures, and then they didn't listen to his answers. I tried to tell you, and you said no. You said you did not want to hear what was in Badlands. I tried to tell.
I didn't expect there to be a basilisk, though, because everyone always says, bring a mirror for the basilisk, and I can't afford a mirror. I could get a mirror now.
Enough arguing.
Well, if I get turned to
the next
stone...
creature.
Well, Iron Grip will ask, would the blindness spell work? And he'll explain about the blindness spell. Would that
Well,
prevent the basilisk from looking at us?
If you can't see it, well, that's a good question. But these honestly are questions best left to the party interacting with each other. If you're just asking an NPC for advice, and I know you want to because I know you want to have the answers and you're trying to solve these problems ahead of time, you're trying to like get ahead of the things. But if you just ask an NPC for an answer and then they give you the answer that solves all your problems, like, again, that's just skipping content, which is totally doable because there's a bajillion, like there's an endless amount of content and we're totally we can totally skip through it. But if it's content that has like super easy to skip things, but it's supposed to be sort of scary, like a basilisk, that becomes less fun. But if a player's like, hey, I see a basilisk, let me try my blindness spell on it with my first action, that's a great way of figuring it out. Like, let the party sort it out in combat. That's the way. If
Is it when I look at it, or it looks at me?
Well, same. When eye contact is made, when you see someone and you feel the flutter, in your gut and your heart, like the same, except you feel heavy and then you turn to stone. Technically, after 2 rounds of saving throws. Now here in Badlands, the veil between worlds is thin. The plane, the world beyond Arcadia, is made up of earth and water and fire and air. And here in Badlands, it is fairly weak, especially near Earth layer. So sometimes elementals come out. Earth elemental, Zorn, Salamander, mostly Earth, some fire, very little water, very little air. But elemental creatures do show up from time to time. And that was a good job. I did that well, because on my encounter list, I just have Zorn. But saying elementals, Zorn, salamanders, blah, 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 gives us a little bit more, like, it could be anything. But the encounter list actually only had Zorn on it. Like, we're going to run 100 combat encounters in the Badlands. I would expand the list to more things, or at least put, like, some variety of elementals in there. But since it's we're only going to spend a couple sessions in here, I have a shorter list, so there's really just Zorn.
How are you able to travel this land?
Oh,
Does
we
not
don't.
sound good.
It's a bad idea.
But you're an expert of it.
Yeah.
I shrug.
Well, look, it's a specialty. I am one of few people who do this route. I go carefully, I go slowly. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad
Don't
you're
let
here,
me die.
Austin.
Well, so don't let me die. That's all I have to say. Normally, if I do this run, I take no other people with me. Very small amount of stuff. Specialty equipment is different with so many. This is mess.
You try and hide from the birds?
Yes.
Does anything ever kill the jellyfish?
I don't know. I think maybe crab eat jellyfish, or maybe jellyfish eat crab. I do not know. Maybe they both eat the mold in water. Drugs. We didn't mention whether or not the mold was a monster, but there's mold in their water. Is it normal mold? Is it toxic mold? Is it sentient mold? Is it monstrous mold? Is it a colony of things with spores and stingers? Who knows anything about this mold in the water?
This place is weird.
Giants of some kind, like ogres, cyclops.
Still not done.
Oh no, you keep talking. How can I get through list when you? It's okay. Long trip. Long trip. Ogres and cyclops and giants of that kind occasionally come here and make lair for a little time, and then they leave away, or they all die. So maybe something like that, maybe. And this place is testing grounds for new monsters that gods make. Mean gods make mean monsters. Last time I was here, there was a giant insect whose antenna turned my sword to ash. So that was very bad. He says ash. I just don't want to say the word rust monster giant insect with antennas that turns my sword to ash. That's a rust monster right there. But I'm trying to give it a slightly different tone and slightly different flavor, so it's not just, and there's rust monsters here. Try to spice it up with a little bit of different creative approach to description, because turning something to rust is sort of turning it to ash. Went very far that day. It was good, very hot.
Sounds like a cruel joke. Jackson must have made that one.
Oh, it's a very bad monster. Okay, now I'm done. Now, that's not true. There's one more creature on this list that we haven't gotten to yet. That he left off the list, but is actually on the list. And we'll talk about it in a little bit.
Cheers to that.
We appreciate your help, and we'll make sure to keep you safe.
Yes.
Intel is always quite valuable.
Well, if I die, I don't know how you get anywhere. This river is confusing. Well, it branches. There's low areas. There's sandbars. You don't know which way to take. You wander around and forever is real bad. Looks around. I know everyone here is important, but without me, you all die. So keep me alive, please.
Okay.
Internally, in Iron Grip's hierarchy of who's important, he was at the top, and then it was Cypher, but now this guy's at the top, and then it's Iron Grip, and then it's Cypher.
So, Cypher. Now you know what's here. We got a plan for our defense.
Cypher has no plan. Cypher forgot Cypher's name.
Cigarette Cypher.
Iron Grip will speak up and say, the plan should be simple. We will use the hut to conceal ourselves in the wild.
Blah, blah, blah. We're going to skip ahead.
Ritual spell. Even if the direction is a little bit messed up, you'll know that at least, okay, that's to my,
So this
east,
plan right here that Droll Razors, we're going to actually listen to the plan a little bit more because it's such a fucking good idea. I've never thought of it myself, but it's so good. Yeah, it's not a concentration, so you can make as many of them as you want. So what we're doing here, I'm just going to let it run while I talk, is Cypher is going to use, not Cypher, Droll Razor's Iron Grip is going to use the alarm spell, which he can cast as a ritual, which will take 10 minutes. And then he's going to cause the mental alarm that each one triggers to be slightly different from one another. And that way, if it's a high-pitched sound, it's coming from the north. If it's a low-pitched sound, it's coming from the east. If it's a jingle sound, it's coming from the south. And if it's a whistle sound or whatever, I'm making up these examples, but different sounds coming from different regions. So that way, when you hear the alarm going off, everyone instantly knows, at least the vague general direction that it's in. I don't know if that is written into the spell, because that's actually a really cool ability, and it totally makes the spell way better. I don't know if it makes it too powerful, but it does make it much better. So the spell says you set an alarm, it alerts you when a thing goes through it. When you cast the spell, you designate creatures that won't set off the alarm. You also choose whether it's mental or audible. This ping awakens you even if you're sleeping.
Nice, okay.
An audible alarm produces the sound of a handbell for 10 seconds within 60 feet. Well, a handbell could come in lots of different shapes and sizes. I think it produces a singular sound, but I really like the option of having it produce slightly different handbell sounds and then being able to use that for directionality. It's such a good idea, and Potato McWhiskey kills it setting up defenses like that.
12 Razor's familiar, can always scout ahead. We need to keep our eyes open, our eyes peeled and ready. I think it's unlikely that we just get ambushed out of nowhere.
I hope so.
Droll Razor will discuss with the party about whether or not they would rather have my film.
More work.
No,
I will.
Can't. Blah 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 blah. There's something else coming up here.
Smart.
I think we'll be okay. Steerbear, how much longer till the boat's fixed?
This music's a little bit
Let me go check on
too
Ethan.
intense for this moment.
I don't
I go outside.
I don't know about your group, but for me and Droll Razor, I think we'll be okay. has not won us any battles.
Correct.
Skip.
That we
Okay. Can I help or?
Skip. Okay, just wants to make skip. It's not like collapsible. It's
To it. Do you want higher?
sash with a bag attached to it, and big hip bag. They are wearing. Here we go. Alarm goes off. So the alarm goes off is what we're saying right here. The party's sitting, they're waiting, the alarm goes off. You can immediately use an action to look through the eyes of your raven, and you can see that there is a person coming up from the coming down from the north. So we're going to talk about this person here. But if there's any players watching, you don't have to skip this part. But if you want to avoid any spoilers, you might want to skip this part. But, you do you. I trust you all to have fun however you want to have fun. From the direction you are heading. So what we're getting here, north, coming up, they have no hair on the top of their head, so it looks to be a incoming male. They are wearing brightly colored clothing. They've got like a purple cloak, a very light but long sleeve shirt. They've got like a red sash with a bag attached to it, and big hip bag on their side, and fancy
Are they
beard.
like hurrying?
They're walking.
Would you like a Raven perception check? Or
Look at the time. So there's this person, right? And the way I described him was based on the token that I had, and I wanted just like a merchant token. And it's a person walking through the Badlands, and they set off the alarms, and the party comes, and the party surrounds them, and the party's like, who's this person? What's happening here?
you can't do any of their attacks, but if they have like little here, they got a memory.
I will roll this in secret. Wrong. 10 minutes setting each one, and they're only a 20 by 20 cube, so maybe they are pretty close. Maybe it does go right along. We're sort of figuring out some mechanics of like where the alarms might have been.
Was Droll Razor out loud and actually able to tell us that it was a person that set off the alarm?
Yeah, Droll Razor's near everyone. Everyone's kind of hanging out together. So, okay. We're gonna skip ahead.
I don't want to be out here when a basilisk shows up. You can either come to town or, I guess, be on your way. And I'll start to retreat.
All right, so they talk to this person a little bit, and they deem the person to be a traveling merchant who's not a threat. But it's a traveling solo merchant by land in the Badlands, this area that we just talked about being so dangerous. And the person, doesn't really have anything for sale, asks a few questions about the party. There's a little bit of tension, like, who are you? Why are you here? What's going on? This seems sketchy. But the party decides not to murder this person for no reason and not to, steal their stuff. They just let it all happen. And the question is, who is this person? Like, why is a singular merchant traveling the Badlands? We just spent a whole bunch of time talking about how dangerous the Badlands are and how Ostigan is one of the few people who can go up and down it without any problem. And yet, here's this person. Well, this person is the last thing on our encounter list. Did I ask them to roll? I think I asked them to roll an encounter check before this guy showed up. Yeah. Taking a look at these dice rolls here, the first D100 is the encounter check. And there's a 30% chance of an encounter per day that I've just declared randomly. And so a 17 is within 30%. And so there is an encounter. The next D20 is on the table. I have a table like if the party's traveling on the river, then there's a thing. And if the party's traveling by land, there's another thing. And you roll on that table and that tells you what sort of encounter you're going to get. So an 8, the party's on the river. So an 8 means a... Oh, no, the party's on land. They're not on the river because they're hanging out on the side. So an 8 means a land encounter. So that brings us to the land encounter table, and the party rolls a d20 to see like what the actual creature is. So it's encounter check, type of creature, or zone of creature, and then specific creature. And then they rolled a 19 right here, which is the last thing on our table. And that last thing is a disguised werewolf. right? This person that they're meeting, this guy right here, who is he actually is a traveling merchant, but he's also actually a lycanthrope who would rip the party to shreds and steal all their shit. But he gets to talk with them in a non-threatening way because he just looks like a regular human merchant. And then you know what? There's a lot of people. They seem pretty tough. They've got a magic hut. They've got alarm spells. This is not my fight. This is not my day. I'm going to move on. They seem pretty on guard and defensive. So that's who this person is. I know a lot of people have been asking about it. And they do some nice little RP with him. And in the end, he goes on his way.
It was more humiliating for the opponents. That's what I liked about it.
I asked the slave master if I could have his liver, but they wouldn't let me.
He didn't go to heaven then.
Traveling through their territory, they exact a heavy blah blah blah. Skip.
You seem like a scholar. Am I picking up on that correctly?
We're skipping through a lot of this because they talked to this guy for quite a while, but like, it's great RP. There's not much to say about it though. The only thing in here is just me like hinting very, very vaguely at him being some sort of powerful creature, but not really saying it outright and trying to, cover the tracks and everything. Merchant. Traveler.
But yeah,
fine. It's fine.
It fits the encounter.
They
time, but maybe like the thought is like rattling with them.
The boat which
Setting up.
No, moving on.
Cameo, so it's gonna be merch.cameo.com/store/save-or-die.
That's a reasonable thing to think. All right, we can see here another D100. It rolled less than a 30 or less, so that's definitely an encounter. A 5 on the table. So now the parties on the river should be water and land encounters. And a 7 and a 13. One is for the river and one is for the air. The 7 is jellyfish. And we've seen like when you have a jellyfish encounter, they're not necessarily going to attack you, but they're just around. And the 13 for the air is flying snakes. So that's what we're going to see next.
Fucking trollery. It's come back for my head.
And flying snakes here
most effective
good.
monster of all time.
Yeah.
This is a good encounter. Let's watch.
Got a good kill ratio, hasn't it?
So what's it like in the boat? In fact, what is the marching order in the boat?
Right, so we're coming up with a flying snake encounter. We know that they do like an electric discharge. We know they're large, brightly colored creatures with wings, and they fly, so you can probably see them coming from a ways off.
Because the boat, it's not very big.
So we're asking them all the details that you want the party to say before the party knows the threat, so that way they're not planning for your specific threat. So before we've introduced the creatures, let's figure out how you behave normally.
Clearly, Ostigan's in the back.
Ostigan and Ethan are in the back with the cleric kind of back there.
Dremir is towards the middle because he has...
We get into our marching order.
Right. Well, you're in your boat, and there are these jellyfish that have been around you. They were around you before. You see them from time to time, and then they disappear again. And this is one of those moments where the clustering of jellyfish is like uncomfortable. Like because they rolled jellyfish on the river, and that doesn't mean jellyfish are trying to attack them, but it just means that the jellyfish are a potential threat. Too many of them nearby. It's like actually getting hard to move through the water because you keep bumping up against them over. I've kayaked in the ocean when the jellyfish around me were so tight that as you're kayaking, like you're just pushing jellyfish and water, obviously, but like you're in a blob. And there's not really a good way to impart the unsettling feeling of rowing or paddling when you're completely surrounded by jellyfish. Because or at least you think, or at least you fear that they would hurt if you fell into that water. And also that you're completely surrounded and they're bumping up to each other, like, against each other. And so if you fall in, it's not one jellyfish that's going to sting you.
it's going to be all the jellyfish that sting you. And as you're trying to get out of the boat or climb back into the boat, if you can, it's going to be all the jellyfish. And if your head goes underwater, you're definitely going to get stung all across. Like it's a deeply uncomfortable feeling to know that the only thing standing between you and possible death. I don't know if you could climb back into a boat if you're being covered in jellyfish that are all stinging you. I don't know if you have the capacity or the strength or the attention, or I don't know how bad a jellyfish sting is. But the thought of like, if I fall out of this boat, I could very well just be stung to death or stung to the point where I can't take care of myself and I will drown with all these jellyfish. And it's very unsettling. And I don't know how to explain that to my players. So I just mentioned that it's uncomfortable to be surrounded by jellyfish, but having been surrounded by jellyfish in a small boat before, like in a kayak before, it's very uncomfortable. Like it's very spooky over and over again. And so your progress has like slowed as you're having to like use rods in the boats to push the jellyfish physically away from you. It's messy. And the water looks extremely unfriendly at this moment in time.
Just remembering
That's
that
not
is
what
not fun.
is triggering our encounter here. What's triggering our encounter is the appearance. Also, this music? It's unsettling music. I think this is Dead Planet, maybe, or Doomed Planet, or something like that. It's not. This is a great track for the situation because it's not so intense that it like obstructs conversation, but it's just enough that it like gives you a hint of what's going on.
Say it. It's a giant. It's a giant manticore.
Can it not be a giant?
We found the Tarask.
Right, it's just a series of background tones.
Oh fuck.
Well, that's a nice face to pause on. In the conversation earlier, where I'm like, this monitor, that monitor, blah blah blah. On the my far left, far right, what I was doing just a few seconds ago. This is where I keep my books. So when I turn way over here, I'm either looking at my books or looking at my notes because this is the book and note area. Well, also. The Roll20 monitor, and then the notebook sits below the Roll20 monitor. So, monitor, notebook. Just in case you want to play the what is the DM looking at now game.
We found the Tarask.
Right? Oh yeah, it's totally right. The appearance of 2d4 flying snakes. Mr. Moon, would you roll me 2d4?
2d4 flying snakes.
Jesus. Now, this encounter goes really well, okay? It goes really well, and I'm very happy for it. We'll just play it out a little bit, but we're going to skip through most of it. Now, they are large creatures, and they are very brightly colored, so you can see them from a long way off. So this is important. So often, when we roll encounters, we get stuck in the mindset of encounter. Everyone is already face to face, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Having these brightly colored flying snakes being seen from a great distance away makes total sense, and it's really easy to gloss over that fact and just be like, they're on the map. They're within 100 feet of you already, just because you have a map and you want to use it and you want to have the blah, blah, blah. But saying that you spot these things from a long way off, killer. So we're going to put them on the far side of our map here.
How big are we talking here?
They're like 10 feet long with giant wings.
Holy fuck. That's terrifying.
Yes. A little bit.
Where's the boat? Oh, I see.
Yeah, you guys are way at the bottom of the map.
There's nowhere to like pull off, huh?
This is the same map that they fought the Kazu on. This is where the boat was pulled up. This is where their tiny hut was. This is where the merchant came from. I just moved some elements around and reused the same exact battle map because why not? You're just in a different place. The terrain's slightly different. We can just pretend it's a different part of the river, totally far away.
Listen,
You're in some awkward, like with all these sticks and rocks and bony bits. It's hard to pull off, and then there's all these jellyfish in front of you, so you're already sort of in a slowed, slogged position here. And these things are flying this way. So
Are these the ones that
Austin.
make electricity?
Yes.
yes, but I'm going to give you maybe 1 minute before they arrive at this position on the map, and when they get to this position on the map, we're going to need to go in initiative order because they can probably close that distance in, 10, 15, 20 seconds.
Austin,
So-
we see flying serpents. What do you recommend? Should we lay down in the boat? Act dead?
I think that you should kill them before they arrive. And he looks to the water. I would not go in the water right now. This is very, very bad. It is bad. With the jellyfish in the water and the position of the boat, there's not really a good way to get out of the boat and spread out. And since they do AoE electrical attacks, like the whole party can easily get hit by one of these electrical attacks. The party's actually in like epic danger right now. Hey, someone has make ice come from sky. That's the ice storm spell he's referring to. Someone make ice come from sky last time?
What? Oh, that was lightning.
Well, that's not good. Lightning does not help. They're not hurt
Probably
by it.
immune.
Yeah.
Is there anywhere we can pull the boat off to?
He will push the boat forward, and if anyone wants, actually, it would have to be Mr. Moon because you're the one in the front. Although I guess anyone could get past you, really. You can make a dex check to hop off the boat. DC 10 dex check to hop off the boat and onto this rock up here.
I don't
How
think I
long
want
does
to
it take
split the party?
No,
To
I say we.
ritual cast
I mean,
is 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
minutes.
Okay.
So what's the party going to do? You see these AoE monsters come from a distance. And we're just going to spare some time here. We're going to use not absorb elements. We're going to use fog cloud as a solution up to one. And this is just a great use of fog cloud because it lasts up to an hour. And it's got a pretty big AoE, 20-foot radius, is 40-foot diameter, and 45 technically. And that will completely obscure the boat and all its occupants from the snakes. And the snakes are smart, but they're not like super smart, and they can't see anything in there. And so they've seen this from afar. That's why they've come here, and they're going to fly around for a little while, and then they're going to leave. And the party completely resolves this combat encounter with a singular defensive spell. This combat encounter could have been lethal. These flying snakes have... I did not open up Roll20, and it's a... Let me just open up Roll20 right now. Let's see what's going on. Let's take a look at their stat blocks and figure out how terrifying these suckers are. Because I think they are just a wee bit scary. Let's see. Monsters, snake winged. So they have 53 HP and 14 AC. And they do 2d8 damage to everything within 10 feet. It's a DC 14 dex saving throw to avoid. So that's pretty scary. 2d8 damage is actually not a lot. I think I just took the 2d8 from the second edition, but it probably should have been like 3d8 or something. And there are 6 of them, so that's 12d8 damage if they all, wanted to do the thing on the party. So 12 times 4.5 is 54 damage. And if you pass all of your saves, it's 27 damage. And considering that none of the party has 54 HP, and much of the party, some members of the party have less than 27 HP. This would wipe all the NPCs, and it would probably take down at least half the party if these flying snakes could actually get here. With 53 HP, the party wouldn't have been able to drop any single one of them on any given round. And it would have been bad, okay? It would have been real bad. Now, the flying snakes do have 10-foot blind sight, but the fog cloud is 20-foot diameter or 20-foot radius. And so unless the snakes dive blindly into the weird fog cloud, which doesn't seem like a thing a non-monstrous creature would do, they just fly around for a little while and walk away. And I can't tell you how proud I am of the party for seeing an encounter and finding a non-combat solution to it. I really thought we were just going to get into another big long slog and we'd like wipe the party of more abilities and powers, but no. They pull out a perfect defense against the snakes. And I love it. They did a really, really good job here.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of this party.
They're sentient if they don't speak.
That's a fantastic question. But as you reach over and try to drop some food in the water, a jellyfish tentacle will sort of whoosh. They got lucky. Because look at that. That's an 8, but it's in red, so it's a natural 1. Which means that they have +7 to hit with their tentacles. And the jellyfish tentacles are bad, okay? They produce a DC 11 Constitution saving throw or be poisoned for a minute. And while you're poisoned, you're paralyzed. So it's bad, right? It's real bad to get touched by one of these suckers. Luckily, they out of the water at you. Rolling a natural 1, by the way. I mean, +7 is just crazy. Why do they get +7? Is that an error? Proficiency bonus 2, 1. They shouldn't have +7. Why do they have +7? That might be an error. I don't really know. And you're able to pull your hand back well in time, but one of these tentacles did sort of lash out at you when your hand went over the boat and the little piece of meat falls into the water. And it's murky. You can't see that deep down, but you do see it slow, like it brushes against some of these little tendrils, which then kind of wrap around it and pull it. It's brought into the jellyfish and slowly consumed and digested.
Maybe you're right. They do want to eat us.
Of course, the jellyfish.
Let's get going. This place.
And then there are times where you don't think there are any, but then like one just bobs to the surface, like it must have been 2 or 3 feet down, just below where you could see with all the algae and everything. Right here, we're just explaining to the party that sometimes the water looks safe and it's not, and that's an important thing to say. You want to give the party as much information about their surroundings as possible so that they can make decisions and also so they feel more immersed in the game. And so when we talk about like the river looks clear and then a jellyfish bobs to the surface, so you know that there are more jellyfish down there, but they're just not at the surface, that gives the party like a sense of danger, just a low level sense of danger. You know, we don't want the party... If we never talked about it and the party's like, well, I don't see any jellyfish, so I jump in the water, and you're like, well, there's jellyfish down there, you just didn't see them. Then like the person just made a bad judgment call and they're getting wrecked for it, which is appropriate. But you want to what do you say? If you were cruising in the Amazon River and you knew that there were piranha in the Amazon River and you didn't see any piranha, would you jump in the river? No. But it can be easy to forget about those details when you're just playing a game at your desk online with your friends. You can forget about the ever-present danger. So it's always good to remind the players of the ever-present danger, that it's there even if you can't see it. So it's hard to tell. But they don't seem to only swarm when monsters are coming.
They seem to be reacting to the movement of the boat, perhaps. Like I try maybe like throwing a rock beyond where some of them are and seeing if they'll move towards that.
They give me a really good investment. We're gonna move on. You know, that's an interesting idea. Maybe you could distract them away from you. Jellyfish don't move that fast. They're also not that. I mean, these are sentient jellyfish. They have 10 int. They're pretty smart. But like you're not going to be able to just avoid. Again, it's not a avoid all jellyfish button that you can press.
I've done about 5 investigation checks and no insight checks. Okay, sorry.
It's time to investigate.
But I have to
investigate.
Hold on. I want Sturmer to just understand that Iron Gripper started to look at him with like the same kind of hunger that like a child looks at a chicken tendy.
In the land, is this another encounter
one
check
from
here? Nick and one from Mr. Mooten.
Come on, Nick. We need a 20.
They're all
Oh, it's
back.
so fun. We're fine.
Fine.
I don't know what we're
We're
rolling
fucked.
for here. That's my encounter table. You were actually not fucked at all. Quite the
Nice.
opposite. You see on your boat in the Badlands, but not close enough to be a threat to you, a basilisk. You see
5 is a basilisk
two
on the land table.
basilisks just sort of cruising along the ground, moving their 6 legs and kind of scuttling slowly. It looks like they're headed towards the river, but like at a spot you've already passed behind you. And it comes up to the river and just dips its head down and drinks from the water for a little while. And the other one will come and drink from the water for a little while, and then they'll just head back into the Badlands. Again, not all encounters have to be the monsters are here and you're fighting them right now. The party rolled for a land counter while they're on a boat. They rolled basilisks. Party can probably see the basilisk coming from a little bit away, but also the party's on the boat and a basilisk doesn't have a jump. So as long as the party doesn't look at the basilisk directly, the party's not in any danger. So let's just simplify the encounter and have the basilisks arriving at a point that the party's already passed, because we're not going to deal with them. And we can talk about what the party sees, and we can talk about the dangers of the Badlands, and we can talk about, running into these things, and maybe the party wants to go out of their way to meet the basilisk, maybe not, but either way, like, the Badlands are bad. Let's reinforce this area. The Badlands are bad.
I'll look to the sky and say, Roy, did you see that? You would have loved this, buddy.
He really would.
That is so accurate and so
Correct.
skippy lands. Not all the way through, but you're beyond the halfway point now.
Are we beyond that big?
On most of the way through to be here. The cave.
Are we beyond that big cave that we?
Perfect. The big cave. Now, previously, we had mentioned we're at 119. We had mentioned on this map that about halfway through there's this cave. It's a really big cave where 2 rivers confluence, and that is actually where we are. Nick's asking if we're there, and we certainly are. Be here. The cave.
Beyond that big cave that we were warned about.
No. The cave is up ahead. It is soon to be here.
What is the plan?
Well, something may live there. Maybe not.
I guess
I
we'll
am
just have to
guide.
roll for it.
You are warriors. If
Guide's
it's
not gonna help you get past
something
this.
like Hydra, and it is not in water, we just sail by. If it is something like Dragon, I think we all die. So
Dragons are intelligent. We can talk to them.
You think there could be a dragon in there?
He shrugs. It's big cave in scary Badland place. Gods are not always nice. You see how many gods have come to Earth lately? So many. And they seem like nice gods, but Martha, god of creation, she create monsters. She build all the monsters of the world. Not always that nice. Right there, that's an important piece of lore, because we often talk about Martha, the goddess of life and creation, as like a good goddess. She's the one who helps all the other gods create things, like create creatures. And Falumbra, repository of souls in the afterlife, gives up a part of herself, which are the souls, to create creatures as well. So these, generally considered nice or good or at least neutral goddesses, are like intimately involved in the creation of monsters, and at least in Falumbra's case, like completely evil people. If she gives you souls, your soul, then she gives the Hitlers of the world their Hitler soul. And so I make an effort to try and be like, goddess of life and creation, these are great things. She like protects people and this thing and that thing. And it's important every now and then to realize that even the goodest of gods are like ultra powerful N+3 dimensional creatures with objectives that are incomprehensible, and to remember that just because they're like one of the good gods doesn't mean that they're a good god, you know?
Yeah.
Martha. Martha is the Great Maw? Tell me more.
Well, I mean, Malchus says, Martha, sister of mine. You know, sister wife. Let us make humans. I have idea. I want creatures that can do anything but don't do anything very well and very adaptable. So help me make humans. And so now there are humans. And we do everything and anything, but nothing great.
Cypher will laugh at the human stereotype and like give like Droll Razor an elbow.
He's underselling it slightly.
I mean, you know, so Martha makes all the things, but all the other gods are the ones who come and say, Martha, I need this. Help me make this. And then she helps them make that. Good
Enough
Lord.
with the philosophy. There's a dragon up ahead. Angrip, how far can your raven go and check out the cave?
About 100 feet. But do not fret.
Fuck that.
In an attempt to make the party feel better about the threat of a dragon, Iron Grip will explain that the larger and more powerful the creature that eats you, the higher the circle of heaven you get into.
Fantastic.
Religion.
I'm making a cleric of this religion.
We're gonna skip.
Yeah, what guys are we talking about?
1, 2, 3. We're actually gonna skip quite a bit here because the party sees some monsters, and then they do a lot of planning for how to deal with these monsters. There's a lot of planning. So here is our rough map of what we're gonna see. We're going to skip the planning because there's a lot of like, well, we could do this, we could do that. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of some of it's good planning, some of it's not great planning, but it gets into that realm of like everyone is pitching ideas, but no one likes any idea super well, and no one likes any idea well enough to say we should absolutely do this. And it just begins to get into that like dragging on zone. And I think it's Mr. Mooten who calls out to the rest of the party to just like pick a fucking idea and do it. Let's not spend our entire lives theory crafting plans that we don't need to do. So in this situation, we're at the fork in the river. This is the river's not as wide as I'd like it to be, but it's hard to make big rivers on battle maps without the maps just being entirely river everywhere, or without the map getting too big. So here we've got the part that the party's coming up. This goes the one way towards the hills. This would go the other way towards the swamp, which is where they want to go. Then we've got this like ring of spikes over here with a pit and some lava in it. And then we've got ourselves some ogres over here. And I think there might be another ogre or a cyclops somewhere else. And the party's plan is generally going to be, let's just go past. And I think they're going at night or they're going at evening. They're trying to do like a darkness thing. And I think that I'll leave you to figure out the plans yourself, or to watch the episode for the plans. But the party's got their sail going. They've got all their stuff. And as they come up, a cyclops, I believe, begins to throw some rocks at the party, and maybe some javelins go on. And once again, we see fog cloud being used to great effect. This one is upcast at a higher level, so it's a much bigger cloud of fog. And the party is going to try and just avoid the monsters by using like shielded fog clouds. But the Cyclops can move, and the river keeps going. And once you're sort of encountering them, like they could follow you along the river and throw stones at you every round for a while, and you just have to get lucky. And the boat does take some damage, I believe. Not enough to sink, but enough to be problematic. And so our party instead makes landfall, and we have an encounter. And so we're going to actually talk a little bit about this encounter.
Just like shuffle my way to the front of the. Would that be a bad?
That would. We're going to just move fog cloud a little bit. Disappeared. Mostly what I have to say is about NPCs here. Okay, here we go.
For now.
Right. So our party is trying to get off the boat and get into this stuff. The fog cloud's there, and the fog cloud's a little bit frustrating because you can't see the creatures in the fog cloud, but I don't want to remove the creatures from the board, but the party can kind of still see where they are and what's going on in there. There's a certain level of this game where the character knowledge doesn't match the player knowledge, especially in combat situations, because the players have this like beautiful top-down view with like really good information, and they can see everything, and they've got minutes and minutes to look at stuff, and there's no pressure on them, while their character is like pushing past this person, trying not to tip the boat, hopping onto land, drawing their sword, and then it's just a fog bank there and a wall over here, and there might be like an ogre head. Like the characters definitely don't know what's going on nearly as well as the players, and that's always a constant struggle. I wish there was a way to give a better sense of the danger and confusion and uncertainty of combat, but there's just not.
Be done. So like.
We're going to run into some rules questions and blah, 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 but that doesn't really matter.
All the others who will inevitably be.
So now what we have coming up here is Mott. Mott, the healer's turn. I think maybe one or two director's commentaries back, we talked about the purpose of this healer. We're giving them an assistant who's coming with them, who can aid them, but who isn't going to steal the thunder, right? This character is not going to be making the finishing blows. This character is not going to be taking glory from the party, but the character is going to come and do some buffs. And Bless is a really good, straightforward buff. Fantastic. Good job, Mott. She'll also do some healing spells here and there, maybe something else every now and then. And that's kind of her purpose. Friendly NPC, help the party, steal no one's thunder. Our other combat NPCs here are Mitz, who sucks, and Ethan, who is fine. He's fine. Yeah. So our party's going to hop into battle. Cassian is going to be doing unbelievable damage over and over again with his great weapon master ability, and they're going to make pretty short work of these ogres. The Cyclops is a terrifying monster who could have ruined the party, and doesn't quite get a chance because they end up blinding the Cyclops pretty fast. I mean, the Shatter spell helps, does some damage. The ogres have good club attacks. But it's a pretty straightforward battle. But one thing we do see here, yeah, he failed his saving throw and he's blind, and now he's totally fucked. One thing we do see is some ogre reinforcements after a couple of rounds. Like I think one ogre flees, and then a little bit later, some other ogres come back out, and it sort of draws out the encounter. And so instead of fighting like 7 ogres and a Cyclops up front, it's like 4 ogres or 3 ogres and a Cyclops, and then another 2 or 3 ogres and the Cyclops still after the first 3 die. Yeah. And that's a good way of going about it. Now, we will see Mitz running in and doing semi-suicidal supporting maneuvers. And this is like over and over and over again. Like Mitz is consistently... he's being a really good minion. He's not making amazing strategic decisions, but he is showing a certain level of bravery, and I'm a minion who goes in front and does these things. And there's a reason for that. There's a reason why we keep putting Mitz in the front. First off, if Mitz is not in the front at hitting things with his club, Mitz is not doing anything at all. He's too shitty to do anything at all to begin with. His only value is in the front lines, hitting things with the club. And so if we're going to like try and protect Mitz in any way, shape, or form, we might as well just write him out of the campaign because it doesn't do anything. So that's how he's useful. The second reason, and actually the far more important reason, is that the minions of heroes and villains that we come across in this Age of Heroes are often in the front lines fighting. And it would be really weird if the minion used to fight in the front lines for the baddies, but then when he's working with the party, doesn't do that. And so we're trying to paint opinion of minions in general. When we talk about Mitz is sort of our tool for reflecting back on the world and being like, this is what this class of person thinks and does. We're like one-dimensionalizing the minion a little bit. Just with their combat actions, we're one-dimensionalizing them. We're showing this one important dimension of who they are. This really important dimension of who they are. In conversation, there's not much going on, but we see Mitz is a little bit more multifaceted there. And that's their whole point. That's what they do well. Anyway, moving on, some combat, some good rolls, some climbing up walls. We always make our players, I think we always make our players, yeah, there's the athletics check right here. We always make our players climb up walls, and we count the extra movement here. We want height to be a factor, and I will set the DCs somewhere usually between 10 and 15, just sort of judging on what my instinct for the area is. And I tell them what the roll is ahead of time, and then they can choose to make it or not. And it's important to always, it's important to remember the rules and call for dice rolls, even when it doesn't feel like it matters. But it's important to keep that routine going so that you can create a set of expectations. So the players can have a good practice feeling for how things work, and then when it becomes important, they're already going to be ready for that to happen. And also just to make the world feel a little bit more fleshed out. Like, you want to scale up this area, you got to make a check. We want to bring the world to life. And so even on dumb things like, here's a little bit of a hill to climb, and you're going to maybe save some movement by not going around, I'm going to need you to make me our DC 13 athletics check. It's a lowish check because I don't really care. But we always got to call for all these things. We're trying to make a living, breathing world, and that's best done by talking about and exploring little details. Blah, blah, blah. Mitz doesn't run, just like enemy minions don't run, even though he's surrounded. Blah, blah, blah. Spells, blah, blah, blah. Shocking grasp, blah, 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 blah. Fighting, fighting, fighting. I think that's pretty much it right here. I don't know. They do some more stuff. The Cyclops comes back. They fight the Cyclops. There's some spells. It's a battle. There's not actually a ton to say about the battle. As I mentioned, a lot of this session we were going to skip over. And we've done about half the session. Now, is it here? There's one other thing that I wanted to talk about.
When the Cyclops threw the rock, he was like, no!
I just want to taken on ogres, and whatever's in the cave might take a little bit longer.
Where it goes.
I think that's a good idea.
On behind the Three Sisters, those active volcanoes, so it's completely in shadow, and you can't see anything that's inside the cave. And when the sun does rise in the east, the cave's mouth will be completely in shadow the whole time, which is super nice. It's very convenient that you can't get that in the evening. The shadows from the Three Sisters Mountains will hide the mouth of the cave, and in the morning, the cave goes towards the east, and so the cave is also in shadow. So you can maybe get a look inside during the late afternoon or midday, but otherwise the entrance to the cave is a shadowy mess. Good idea. And so it'll still be hard to see anything that matters. She can, but she is nervous about getting that close without a huge group of people to defend her.
I can walk with you, Mott.
I'll go too.
We're gonna skip. I thought there's a moment where they begin, where something comes out of the cave, and I don't remember if it's today in this session or in the next session.
Killing that fleeing foe. That was me giving that creature honor by letting it die in battle.
Right? I think it's next session that we see that. I was talking about the god. All right, so we're gonna do. I think we do a little recap at the end where we talk to our players about how their characters are feeling and everything, and we're gonna go over that one more time, and then we'll be done. So where are we here?
The fact that did you see the bloodlust when he saw the corpses fall to the ground and the
this
hunger
is
that he
the meeting in Haven, which is nice. It's a nice scene. You should watch it, but I'm gonna leave it.
Handled the,
You did like to do that. That's true.
Here we go. Well, back in the world, our players have had, or our characters have had, a pretty solid session of not getting killed, of not having to save or die, except for Mott. Cassian, is this your most successful battle yet? This is actual real danger. This Cyclops could kill any one of you. It could have sunken your boat. This could have been a life or death situation, and yet it feels like the party barely broke a sweat.
It's because the party was well coordinated. We all stuck together in pretty good packs. Me and Cypher went and handled the big ones on the right. The party stuck together on the left. I like the addition. I think Cassian really likes the addition of Cypher Quick Claw and Rolf Razor's Iron Grip. They add a good sense of strategy to the party. Cassian would have just went right in the mouth of the cave. They wanted to sit back, watch it a bit, send in some other stuff, and I think it's a good idea. So yeah, could have been super deadly encounter, but the party played it well.
All right. Cypher Quick Claw. You have shown that you have this relationship with Iron Grip over here, where Iron Grip is always saying these things and offering people these food, and you already know what's up, and you kind of ignore it. And yet, there's still a little bit of dissonance. You know, Iron Grip, the jailer, Razor, did kill a fleeing person. It often sounds like the two of you have a very harmonious relationship, but I think we got to see here that it doesn't always work out. What's the deal? Now, it's moments like this where we're doing our reflections. And obviously, I can't prepare these questions ahead of time. They're often about what happened in that session. And I'm trying to pick out moments from the campaign, from that session, and ask the players to reflect on it. And we're doing that for character development reasons, but it's also a useful technique to try and build intentionality out of mundane moments that people would have forgotten about. So Razor's magic missiling, a fleeing ogre, we didn't talk about it. We skipped over that part of the battle, but it happened. After Cypher had said, like, let him go, he's not a threat anymore, but then Iron Grip killed him anyway. That's sort of a throwaway moment, right? No one's gonna really when it's happening, Cypher and Razors have like some banter going on, but 5 minutes later, no one would ever remember that again. And so I'm pulling out these moments from earlier in the session that don't really seem important, and then I try and ask if there is any meaning to it. You know, here is this: the two of you are a fighting team, but we see some dissonance here. What's up with that? And depending on the answer, it could be like, well, shit happens. You know, people don't always see eye to eye. No big deal. Totally fine. Or it could be, I think he gives a good answer. Deal with that.
I think, at least the way that Cypher thinks about this is that these two are extremely good pair when it comes to fighting. Even if their understanding of what it means to fight and what the purpose of fighting is might be a bit different. Cypher is more of the opinion that fighting is something that it's something honorable. It's something that you do almost for art or for sport or for it's something that higher beings enjoy on a different level than an animal fighting another animal for food. The way that she understands fighting is like fundamentally different from the way that a hobgoblin does, but at the same time she understands that is just in the hobgoblin's nature, and doesn't judge him for it, but at the same time will feel bad when his actions kind of go out of the way of that. And I think there's been a lot of situations in the past where, mostly because Cypher knows that in this world it can often be very disadvantageous to act like a complete savage hobgoblin where she's had to reel him in, and at the same time his savage fighting spirit has brought her further, so she sees it as like a push and pull that gives them a sort of inertia and pushes them both forward in some way.
We take an innocuous moment, we get some nice character insight out of it. Some of the character insight is really related to the question I asked. Some of it is just sort of, I'm giving you a seed and you're running off with it. But these character reflections, I think I started doing them during Frozen Frontier, have really become a staple of my campaigning, and I think they are some of the stronger moments. I think these character reflections that we do really do bring our characters to life more, and I think it helps our players develop their characters. I want to say when I first did this during Fro, I tried to space it out more, and it was like, before the first break, we ask this player, and then before the second break, and each person got like, I'm going to ask you a question about your character right now, and then before the next break, you got a question, and we spaced out the character questions And then as time has gone on, I've just like chucked them all together at the end of the session. And putting them together at the end of the session is a nice... This is more of like the production side of what we do here, but it's a nice way to look at the time that we have left in a session and be like, okay, there's 10 minutes left in the session. There's no room to get another encounter. I'm not going to talk about anything else, but if we just like let the players talk about their characters for 10 minutes, we can fill that time up. Or if there's like 20 minutes left in the session, I can like talk a little bit about in-game stuff until we get to 15 minutes left, and then we can ask some questions, maybe do a couple of questions, maybe ask some follow-up questions, or if there's like, you know, we're already running out of time, I can just cut the questions. So it's one of the reasons they've all been shoved to the end has been a more of a production issue, just finding some flexible time that we can add in or take out, or have more or less of, just to round out the episode well. I do sort of miss spreading out these questions, though. I think it helps do character development as the session goes along instead of chucking it all at the end. And then you can kind of play off of that stuff. If we were to ask this question after the first hour and they gave this answer, then like in the second, third, and fourth hour, they might be able to play off of the things that they just said while it's still fresh in their mind. And that would have been, that could be cool. That could be cool. On the other hand, sometimes you need a whole session to get things to ask about. Sometimes the first hour, nothing happens. And the second hour, a little bit happens. But by the end, you've got some stuff to work with. So if you're running a campaign and it's not on stream, I would recommend spreading out the question asking throughout the session. Like whenever the players have downtime, or whenever you're trying to like add a beat between encounters, or you're trying to like, you know, you want the emotional tone of the campaign to be going up and down. You know, you want intense combat, then you want some downtime, you want some jokes, you want some cool role playing, maybe like a tense moment, and then like some shopping and some other, like you want the tone to be going up and down all the time. And so this is a really good way when it's like, okay, we fought the goblins. We're going to take a long rest, then we're going to go right back in the morning and fight the goblins again. And you could just be like, cool. Well, everyone goes back, you long rest, and now we're back at the cave. And the party's like, great, we're back at the cave again. But no time, like, while a day has passed in game, no time has passed out of game. And the players are still sort of being mentally fatigued by all that stuff. But you give them a break. You say you take your long rest. Here's your reflection moments. The party does a little bit of reflection. Then maybe they come back and they, in that reflection time, they've changed their mind about the goblins, or they've come up with a new approach, or they're still gung-ho for it, but now they're a little bit more refreshed because they've taken a moment to do some other stuff. Anyway, I'm saying the reason we pack them all in at the end is for production reasons. And if you're going to be using the interviewing your players about their character techniques, which I highly recommend, you should scatter it out some more. Rawls Razor, how do the two of you manage to navigate the things that seem like they would be a big deal between you?
So for Iron Grip, for a hobgoblin, and in the culture that he's from, fighting is like it's just a language, right? It's a way to communicate. To him, killing that fleeing foe, that was me giving that creature honor by letting it die in battle, right? That was me ending the conversation.
Dude, Potato McWhiskey generates such good lore. He does a great job. All right, we're gonna be done with this. I think we asked Steermere a question too, but we already said enough nice things about Nick, and if we listen to what he has to say, we'll have to say more nice things about him. And how can you possibly just keep saying nice things about people in your life? That feels weird. So we're done with episode 11 of the Lazarus Expedition Director's Commentary. Thanks for coming by and watching. Right now in game, I think we've just played our 14th session. Supposed to be a 10 to 15 session campaign, and I think we've just played session 14, and there's probably 2 to 4 sessions left, so we're going to go a little bit longer than intended. But that's going to be it. We're going to be done. We'll come back next week
well, we'll come back next time for the next Lazarus expedition director's commentary, where there's not so much combat and there is a lot more like eureka moments. And so we'll catch you then. Bye-bye.